All right, kiddos. So today's demonstration is going to be based on your workbook, the Drawing the Nose step by step. I know we're not necessarily doing them in order, but we are doing them in order of what's easiest and best to learn when. Okay, so we're going to quickly go over this page. There are actually 2 pages, 1 page front and back with steps, 5 total steps. I've got a couple examples of different noses here without the bridges. And then you have a practice sheet. The practice sheet has 6 on the front, 4 on the back. In order to receive full credit, you have to draw 10 different noses. Just like with the eyes, we are looking for variety because no 2 noses are exactly the same. So let's go through these steps very quickly. Step 1 has to do, it tells you where to place it, but you're going to start by drawing a large circle and then 2 smaller circles on either side. The reason is that this is the tip of the nose, and then these are where your nostrils are in. Now, your nostrils are just holes in your head, so they have cushioning around them. Those are the flanges, as they were. Lightly draw 2 lines upwards from where the center circles and outside circles intersect. So this little spot right here where the 2 circles touch, that's where you're going to draw the bridge. Now, your bridge isn't actually lines, it's just shading, but we're giving ourselves a placeholder. On this one, step 3, we're going to draw a nostril shape. Now, people have different shaped nostrils, and we'll talk about that a little later. But for the most part, you're going to want to go with this comma shape. It's going to stay inside. These circles are a guide. Your nose is not actually comprised of circles. They are the simple shapes that we use to tell us where to put the other materials. So we draw a comma shape for our nostrils. We create the flange by following the circle and then leading it up into the bridge. And then that's how we derive this part of the nose. Now we do shading. We already have the shape of the nose. Now we're going to add shading. And we're going to think of it like a sphere. That's what step 4 is. So you're going to lightly draw the round shadow areas, and you're just going to fill those in. You've got the 3 balls to kind of show you where those shapes need to be. And that's how that works. All right? On the back, our last step involves cleaning up our shading, adding some shading for the bridge. You will probably take shading down below, etc., to kind of add realism. You can't necessarily see the shadow that's here. The printer just ate all of those shadows alive, so I'm going to be showing you in the demo what's going on here. Okay? So there's only 5 steps for this, and you follow the steps in order to get to the nose. So we're going to demonstrate really quickly a nose, and then I'm going to show you how to draw variety into your noses. So our very first step is once we know and we've studied where noses go, which we'll look at that soon, we draw 3 circles. So you draw a big circle, and they don't have to be perfect circles, so don't worry about them being perfect circles. Please don't worry about them being perfect circles. But we draw a big circle on the for the tip of the nose, and then we draw 2 smaller circles for the nostrils. Now these shapes are going to be different person to person, so try to look and figure out what these shapes actually look like. We're just generalizing right now. So that's our first step. Our next is by starting at this section right here, right exactly where they intersect. We're going to draw 2 lines that are the bridge of the nose. This is the ridge. It's going to taper just a little bit to get up in between the eyes. I know I don't have eyes on this page, but you kind of get the idea. And then the same spot is going to taper into a triangle on the bottom. Okay? Now you'll notice that I'm not necessarily, my first line I didn't like. I'm not erasing it, but I'm just kind of going around it for right now. Okay, so we have our general guidelines, and that's what these are. Step number 3 is draw a nostril shape. Now, I wrote down think comma on its side. A comma looks like this, right? If you're really thinking about what a comma is supposed to look like, it looks like that. So we're going to draw that shape on its side, ball here, and then out. A ball here where they intersect. Notice where I'm putting it. I'm putting it where it intersects. A ball here, and then an out comma. And these shapes can be modified. This is just a general idea starting point. We're going to fill that area in, whee, just like that. And then we're going to use these outside circles to show us where the skin wraps around. Now, on a nostril, the skin doesn't touch the edge of the nostril. It doesn't do this. You don't have this like, flap of skin mysteriously fluffing around. It actually goes around your nostril and connects back into the front of your mouth. So it connects down here. And we're going to use that circle. We'll give ourselves a rounded corner here. We're going to use that circle to determine where we go back up into the bridge. You see how this curve kind of dictates where that goes? We go around the bottom, connect back up to the circle, and up. We're going to do the same thing here. We go around the bottom, connect back up to the circle, and then up into the bridge. Okay? For this section, we're going to carry the nostrils down along those lines. We're going to follow that nostril line, and then we're going to curve this one. Okay? So now we have our general nose shape. We have one more step that needs these circles, so that's why we're keeping them. When you shade a circle, let me make that a better circle, hold on. When you shade a circle, what you do is you're going to break it down. You're going to think about where the light is coming from, okay? And that's going to be the light area. You guys remember when we saw this for value, you have a slightly darker area, then you have a dark area on the bottom, and you're going to shade the bottom really nice and dark, and then you're going to shade this really kind of a middle tone, and then this is going to be light, okay? And then you blend them together. So we're going to create this middle right in here and just kind of let that blend out. Notice I'm not using my finger to smudge this around, yahoos. Please don't use your finger to smudge this around. Now we're going to follow those same steps here with each of these three circles. So we're going to say our light's from here, and this is something that you think about. You decide where your light's coming from. It could be from all over the place. But we're going to have our light come from here for right now. We're going to have a highlight on this big circle. We're going to have a middle part, and then we're going to have a darker part. And we're going to do the same thing over here. Here's the highlight, here's the middle, and then the darker in that sphere. Highlight, the middle tone, and then the darker of that sphere. So we're using those. I know they overlap and it can be a little confusing. You got to keep it clear. The one in the middle is the most important one. So we're going to do that one first. So we have this middle tone shading going on. And then we have this darker shading. Okay? Middle tone shading, darker shading. Now I'm going to actually make our nostrils just a little bit darker here. Okay? Middle tone shading, darker shading. Now in the places that it's just a little bit below, we go back to middle. So bring back your middle tone shading. Okay? I'm going to blend that out. I am using my finger. I know I told you guys not to, but we're going to do that really quick just for the sake of right now, and then we're going to erase out the tops of these circles. Okay? Get rid of the circles. We don't need them anymore. We kind of have a shaded nose now. Another way to think about it, to make it a little bit easier, let me draw a small one really fast. We got these three noses, got our bridge, got this part, got our nostrils really quick. Okay. Another really simple way to think about it is you've got, here's the curve for the big circle, here's the curve for the nostrils, and you can simplify it into just a two-tone shadow. So you have light area and a dark area. And again, you erase your tops of your circles out. And you get the same idea but a little less steps. So if it's easier to simplify it even more into just the two-tone shade where you've got 1, 2, 3 going around those circles, then by all means do that. Okay? It requires a little bit of practice to get this right. That's why you have to draw so many of them. Okay? So that was step 4. Step 5 is adding the shadows to the other areas. Now, you can't see it on the worksheet. That's, unfortunately, it's just the worksheet and the print copy. But you have a shadow that's right about here. It kind of looks like a diamond. It comes out from the sides and then it meets down in the middle. When you have the little cupid bow area, we'll talk about that when we talk about mouths. You're going to have a slight shadow. It's going to be a little darker around these lines, so make sure you add that little bit of a darker around these lines. Okay. This comes down about here. Your nostril actually gets a little bit lighter as it goes down. So you've got like really dark at the top of that comma, and then it kind of fades. So you got to blend that out to make that work really well. Okay, for the bridge of your nose, if my light's coming from this side of the bridge will be in shadow, so you create a little bit of a shadow right here at the indent, and it just kind of softens out. Okay, this nostril shadow will be bigger because of that same thing. So we'll just make that a little bit darker. Okay, and then we'll have like a little bit of an indent there, and then the rest of that line's just going to disappear out. That's how you shade a nose. Okay? There's a little bit of thought involved in how you put the shadows in there, but once you have that done, once you understand why it works, it's easier to understand the decisions that you need to make it work. Now, variety. Let me zoom out a little. Just like with the eyes, it is easier to get variety if you do more than one at once. Okay? So let's start with the 3 ball shapes. Now, you don't have to have a perfect circle. In fact, a lot of us don't. You can have an oval for the middle ball. You can have a really wide ball. You can have a really small center ball with larger nostrils. Okay? Or we can have, we'll start with kind of a basic circle. Your nostril shapes can be different. They don't have to be straight. They can be these big fat ovals. They could be little bitty ovals or little bitty circles on the bottom. Where you place them can change too. So I can add variety to this nose by doing the exact same piece and then have the nostrils up higher. Okay, so we'll actually do both of those. I'll add that. Why not? Same basic shapes, just different placement. Okay, I can have the nostrils up higher. And I can have nostrils that are way down low and just barely touching the center ball. So here's a whole bunch of different noses, and none of them look like noses right now. The next step was the nostrils, so let's add nostrils. Now nostrils can come in a variety as well. You can have these really small little nostrils. You can have these big honkin' nostrils. You can have holes that are just straight up holes with just a little bit of curve. You can have a lot of different variety. They kind of look like eyebrows right now. All right, so we're going to use this as a dictation. We have this shape. Oh, I forgot the bridge. Let's do bridges coming up from the center here. Your bridges actually don't even have to be perfectly smooth either. You can sometimes have broken noses, and they'll have an extra ridge in there. You can have these really wide bridged noses. They don't get really wider. They do still taper. So you can have these bridges that kind of taper out, but then they come back in. They always wrap back around the eyes. So however wide the bridge is something you need to look at. You can have really, really narrow bridges. And then you can have just these really simple kind of rounded out bridges. So your bridge shapes can all be different. Where your nose tapers down, in this case, I don't really need to taper it much. The ball has pretty much done it. This one I'm going to taper out just a little bit. It's not going to change too much. This one needs to come down. This is where it connects in down to the lip. Okay, this one's going to need to come down a little bit to kind of smooth out. And this one's going to be really wide. You see how I created each one of those shapes just a little bit different? Every one of those. That's a little hawkish. Okay, now we're going to add in our nostrils. We're going to follow the contour of the nose. We're going to use that as a guide. Follow this line and just kind of come that out, or curve that out. Darker at the top and it spreads out. In this case, we've got this really nice wide sort of thing going on, so we're just going to own it. Wide nostrils. These nostrils are really narrow, so we're going to kind of create this almost triangular shape for this one. Okay? These are broad, so we're going to keep them broad. Nice wide nose here. Okay? And they look all completely different. None of these look the same right now. They are all very variety. They all have a lot of variety. That wasn't a good sentence, but we'll run with it anyways. Okay? Now we're going to add shading. Now I'm going to do the simplified version of the shading for these. The one that has just pretty much the loops following the nostrils. So we've got this inner circle here. Outside circle. Outside circle. I'm just going to draw these lines because I forgot to do the flanges. Inside circle. This is the one that's dominant. The middle circle is the one that's got the shadow that you follow. And then the outside circle and outside circle. Middle circle. Outside circle. Outside circle. And your shadows can have variety too. Like you can aim for the top, you can aim for the bottom. Middle, outside, outside, middle, outside, outside. Now I need to go in and refine my nostrils. Remember, they go under and loop back up and in. They go under, loop back up and in. Under, and then loop back up into the bridge. Loop back up into the bridge. Loop back up into the bridge. I'm going to keep repeating it so that when you guys draw it, it's in your head. Loop back up into the bridge. Under, loop back up into the bridge. Under, loop back up into the bridge. Under, loop back up into the bridge. You get the idea? All these noses, they all look very different. Now we're going to add the shadow. So I'm just going to two-tone shadow this, following that little line that I gave myself. Filling in those blanks, kind of pulling the light down. Do the same thing here, following those shadows that I gave myself. Okay, and over here, following my shadow. Following the shadow line I created. Following my shadow line I created. Whee! Look at all those lines. Now I need a bridge line. I'm just, for ease, going to say all my light's coming from this side. So my bridge, you color in that little crook right there where those meet. You do that on both sides. Okay, crook of the nostrils. Crook of the nostrils. Crook of the nostrils. Some of them are going to be big and some are going to be smaller. And then where the light's coming from, the opposite side, so the light hits here, the light hits here, so the opposite side's in shadow, you add a shadow following that bridge. Okay? You may need to add a little bit more shadow in these places depending upon the scale of your nose and how you can pull that out. A little bit of shadow going outside of the top of the ball can really make the ball of the nose seem a little bit more prominent. Okay, some people don't have that big of a shadow. Sometimes this transition from the ball of the nose into the bridge is really smooth, and sometimes it's really pronounced. Look at the people. You just got to figure out what works best for you. Now I'm going to erase out the tops of my circles now, kind of neaten these lines up a little bit, and be discriminatory. Think carefully about what lines you need to erase. You don't need to erase all of them. Okay, some of them you need. Especially if you're keeping them nice and light and soft. As long as you're not giving yourself hard lines where you don't see actual hard lines, you're good to go. And then I just need the shadows that drop down from each of these noses. So it's just a little diamond shape that kind of comes out from the nose, like that. Little diamond shape comes out from the nose. It's going to be a little bit more pronounced on the shadow side of your nose. Okay. Come down, come down. Some of them are going to be wider and flatter. All your diamond shapes should be a little different. It shouldn't be the exact same diamond every single time, because that gives a character to the face as well. Look at the shapes that you need. And we're just going to fill that in. Okay, so you're going to follow down into the shadow, just kind of darken that area up a little bit, because your nose is attached to your face. So you're going to need to actually show that it's casting a shadow onto the area below it. Okay, you're just going to fill those in lightly. I'm not really blurring them up. I'm not sitting here trying to make them perfect, but all of a sudden I have already drawn 5 completely different noses. I'm halfway done, and it took, what, 10 minutes for me to draw these 5? It's a 20-minute vid? Yeah. All right. Noses are going to be due on Monday. Make sure you get them done. That's how you do it, kiddos. Get working.